Part 9. West Clare, Ireland, February 1848. The fever changed Father Patrick Ryan. Not all at once. That would have been easier. Instead, it stole pieces of him gradually. First his strength, then his appetite, then the ease with which he moved through the parish. The man who had once walked 15 miles without complaint now paused halfway up the church steps. The man who had once carried sacks of meal for widows now struggled to lift the water bucket beside the hearth. Yet every morning when Donoghue entered his room, Ryan gave the same answer: "I'm improving." Donoghue would look at him, Ryan would look back. Eventually one of them would smile. Neither believed the other. "You are impossible." Ryan looked up from the baptismal register. "I've been told this before." "By whom?" "You, frequently." Ryan smiled. "And yet you remain my friend." Donoghue took the register from his hands. "You should be resting." "I'm sitting." "You're working." "I'm sitting while working." "That isn't rest." Ryan leaned back. "Michael." The older priest stopped. The tone was different. "What?" Ryan glanced toward the old register. "When I arrived here," Donoghue smiled faintly, 20 years ago. 21. "You always correct the number, because you always forget." "I forget nothing." "You forgot my first sermon." "I remember it perfectly." "You fell asleep." Donoghue laughed. "I was reflecting deeply." "You snored." "I was praying." "With your eyes closed." "The most sincere prayers are often silent." Ryan laughed, then coughed. The laughter disappeared. That afternoon, after the Angelus bell, Ryan sat beside the fire while Donoghue prepared their supper. 2 bowls, thin broth, a few potatoes. Nothing more. Ryan watched him. "You know, before I came here, I was afraid." Donoghue looked over his shoulder. "Afraid of Clare?" "No." He smiled. "Afraid of you." Donoghue raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "You were the parish priest. And?" "You'd been here 15 years. 16. Again with the corrections. Accuracy matters." Ryan smiled. "I thought everyone would compare me to you." "And?" "They did." Donoghue waited. "They still do." A silence followed. Then Ryan said quietly, "But I discovered something." "What?" "You never wanted me to be you." Donoghue looked down. "No. I think that was when I stopped being afraid." The next morning a messenger arrived, a little girl, perhaps 9 years old. She stood at the front door, trembling. "Father." Donoghue opened it. "Yes, child." "It's my mother." "What about her? She won't wake." Ryan began to rise. Donoghue stopped him. "No." "I can come." "No." Ryan looked offended. "I can still walk." "I know." "Then why?" Donoghue softened. "Because I need you here." Ryan looked at him. For a moment, the younger priest seemed about to argue. Then he understood. Donoghue was not questioning his ability. He was protecting him. "All right." It was the first time Ryan had obeyed without protest. The cottage was 3 miles away. The mother was not dead. Not yet. Donoghue administered the last rites. He had begun carrying them everywhere. Not because he expected death, because he no longer trusted time. The woman opened her eyes afterward. "Thank you, Father." He smiled. "I haven't done anything." She looked towards her children. "You came." Sometimes that was the miracle people needed. Not healing, not rescue, simply knowing someone had come. When Donoghue returned, he found Ryan writing. "What are you doing?" "Letters." "To whom?" "Some parishioners." Donoghue frowned. "You can tell them yourself." Ryan smiled. "Perhaps." That answer stayed with him. The missing Flanagan children were still not found. The search continued, though fewer people joined each day. Hunger had limits. Fever had limits. Human strength had limits. One evening Patrick came to the parochial house. "We found something." Donoghue stood immediately. "What?" "A woman saw them." "Where?" "Near the old coastal road." "Alive?" Patrick hesitated. "She thinks so." Ryan looked up from his chair. "You must go." Donoghue turned. "Not tonight." "Michael." "You need me." Ryan smiled. "I need you to do what you are." The older priest stared at him. "My place is here." "No." Ryan's voice was surprisingly firm. "Your place is wherever someone needs you." Neither spoke. Finally Donoghue nodded. That night before bed, Ryan handed him a small folded paper. "What is this?" "Nothing." "Patrick Ryan?" The younger priest smiled. "You sound like my mother." "What is it?" "Read it later." Donoghue placed it on the table. "I'll forget." "No." Ryan smiled. You won't. The next morning, Donahue prepared to leave. The journey could take 2 days, perhaps 3. The roads were poor, the weather uncertain. Before he stepped outside, he stopped. Patrick. Ryan looked up. Yes? Promise me something. What? Don't try to walk to anyone while I'm gone. Ryan looked offended. I make no promises I cannot keep. Patrick? Very well, he smiled. I promise to attempt obedience. That's not reassuring. It's the best I could offer. They laughed. A small thing, a precious thing. At the gate, Donahue turned back. Ryan stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. For a moment they simply looked at one another. Neither knew why. Neither knew it would be the last time they saw each other as they had always been. 2 priests, 2 friends, 2 men carrying the same parish. The journey was harder than expected. The coastal road had become almost impassable. Twice Donahue lost his footing. Once he nearly fell into a flooded ditch, but he continued, because somewhere ahead were 2 missing children, and because he had promised. Meanwhile, back at the parochial house, Father Ryan woke before dawn. He knew immediately. The fever had changed. The room spun when he tried to stand. He reached for the table, missed, and fell. The sound brought no one. The parish house was empty. The sick children had been moved elsewhere. The old fishermen had died. The widows had returned to their homes. For the first time in months, there was no one there. Ryan lay upon the floor for several minutes. Then slowly he managed to pull himself back into bed. He looked toward the small crucifix beside the window. Not yet. His voice was barely audible. There is still work. But even he knew the fever had finally found him. 2 days passed, then 3. The children were found, alive, barely, cold, hungry, but alive. Donahue wept when he saw them. The first tears he had shed in months. He carried them back toward the village himself. Every step felt lighter, until he reached the final hill overlooking the parish. There he stopped. Something felt wrong. No bells, no smoke, no movement. A strange stillness. A messenger met him halfway down the road. The young boy's face was pale. Father. Donahue's heart tightened. What happened? The boy could barely speak. It's Father Ryan. The world seemed to narrow around him. What about him? The boy looked down. He's very ill. Donahue dropped the child's blanket. The children cried out, and he barely heard them. For the first time in 20 years, Father Michael Donahue ran. Part 10. West Clare, Ireland, March 1848. Father Michael Donahue had spent 20 years learning the sound of death. He knew the difference between the silence of a peaceful passing and the silence of a room where people were afraid to breathe. He knew the sound of a family holding itself together, the sound of someone trying not to cry, the sound of a person who had accepted that the next hour might be their last, but nothing prepared him for the sound of his own friend struggling for breath. The door of the parochial house was open when he arrived. That frightened him more than anything. The door was never open, not in winter, not in storms, not even when they had been too exhausted to properly close it. Inside, the fire had burned low. A bowl of untouched broth sat upon the table. A candle flickered beside the bed. And there lay Father Patrick Ryan. The man who had walked beside him through 20 years of baptisms, weddings, funerals, storms, and famine. Now he looked almost like one of the parishioners they had buried. Too thin, too pale, too quiet. Patrick. Ryan's eyes opened slowly, and for a moment confusion crossed his face, then recognition. Michael. The word was barely audible. Donahue knelt beside him. I came as quickly as I could. Ryan smiled faintly. I know. You should have sent someone. To say what? Ryan's eyes twinkled weakly. Come home, Michael, I have a fever. Donahue looked away. Yes. Ryan smiled. You would have abandoned those children. I would have come sooner. No. Ryan reached weakly for his hand. You would have done exactly what you did. The older priest could not answer. The doctor returned that afternoon. He examined Ryan carefully. His expression told the truth before his words did. He's very weak. Donahue stared at him. But he will recover? The doctor looked down. I cannot promise that. Silence. There is little more medicine can do. Donahue looked towards Ryan. What does he need? The doctor hesitated. Rest. A bitter laugh escaped Donoghue. Rest. The word sounded almost foreign. In this parish? The doctor said nothing, because he knew. For 3 days Donoghue did not leave. The parish continued without him, somehow. Neighbours carried meal, women tended the sick, other children watched younger ones. The work continued, but Donoghue stayed. He sat beside Ryan's bed, changed cloths, gave water, read prayers. Sometimes they spoke, mostly they did not. The silence between them was comfortable, the silence of people who had already said the important things many years before. On the second evening, Ryan opened his eyes. Michael? Yes? Do you remember when I first arrived? You asked where the best fishing was, Ryan smiled. I was trying to impress the locals. You knew nothing about fishing. I knew enough. You caught no fish. That's because the fish were suspicious. Donoghue laughed, a real laugh, the first in weeks. Ryan smiled. There. What? I wanted to hear that. What? You laughing. Donoghue looked at him. Why? Because you've forgotten how. The following morning, Ryan asked for the parish register. No. Michael? No. I need it. You need sleep. Ryan smiled. You sound like me. Donoghue sighed. Fine. He brought it. Ryan ran his fingers over the worn leather cover. How many baptisms? What? Since I arrived. Donoghue shook his head. You cannot be serious. How many? The older priest thought. 312. Ryan smiled. And funerals? Donoghue's face changed. He answered quietly. Too many. Ryan nodded. I always thought the baptisms were the beginning, and the funerals were the ending. He looked toward the window, but perhaps they're both just moments when we remind people they belong somewhere. Donoghue squeezed his hand. You're not dying. Ryan smiled. You've become a terrible liar. That afternoon the knock came. Donoghue ignored it. The knock came again, harder. He closed his eyes. For a moment he remained seated, and Ryan noticed. Answer it. No. Michael. You need me. Ryan looked towards him. Who's outside? I don't know, but they need someone. Donoghue looked down. I cannot leave you. Ryan's expression softened. You already did once. The words struck harder than intended, and Ryan immediately regretted them. Michael? But Donoghue shook his head. No. He understood. Because Ryan was right. The visitor was Patrick. The old farmer looked exhausted. Father, what is it? The O'Malleys. Donoghue closed his eyes. What happened? Evicted this morning. Where are they? Living near the old quarry. How many? Patrick hesitated. The mother, the father, and 4 children. Donoghue looked back toward the house, towards Ryan. I cannot. Patrick said nothing. He didn't need to. Donoghue knew. A child was waiting. A family was waiting. The same as every other day. When he returned inside, Ryan was awake. You have to go. Donoghue shook his head. No. Michael? No. The younger priest smiled sadly. You've always been terrible at obedience. You're not my bishop. No. Ryan looked at him. I'm your friend. That was worse. Much worse. Donoghue sat beside him. I don't want to leave. I know. I should stay. Perhaps. The answer surprised him. Ryan continued. Perhaps you should. A silence. Then, but if you stay, Ryan looked toward the crucifix, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering about those children. Donoghue lowered his head. You know me too well. I have had 21 years. 21. Ryan smiled. Thank you. For what? For always counting. Before leaving, Donoghue prepared everything. Water, medicine, food. The housekeeper from the village would come soon. The neighbours would check on him. Told himself this repeatedly. Everything would be fine. Everything would be fine. At the door he stopped. Patrick? Ryan opened his eyes. Yes? I'll be back tonight. Ryan smiled. I know. You promise? The younger priest looked at him. No. Donoghue froze. Ryan's smile returned. I promise nothing I cannot keep. The old humour, the old Patrick. For the moment he was himself again. The journey to the quarry took hours. The O'Malley family had been living beneath a crude shelter of canvas and branches. 2 children were missing, the youngest, a boy of 6, and his sister, 8. They had wandered away searching for firewood. The entire afternoon disappeared into the search. Then evening, then darkness. Donoghue found them just before midnight. collapsed beneath an abandoned stone wall, alive, barely. He carried the girl, another man carried the boy. When they returned to the camp, the mother wept, not because her children were safe, because someone had found them, someone had come. It was dawn when Donoghue finally turned toward home. His legs ached, his clothes were soaked, his heart was heavy, but the children were alive, that mattered, and that's why he had gone, that's why Ryan had sent him. As he approached the village, he saw the church. The bell tower stood against the morning sky, no bells rang. A strange fear entered his heart. Not fear, knowing. He quickened his pace, then he began running.